Hey guys, Max92, welcome back to another tryout. Today's tryout is on Blue Dragon. So if this is a game you haven't heard of, Blue Dragon was an Xbox exclusive JRPG back on the Xbox 360, and it features the creative talents of people like the creator of the Final Fantasy series, the composer of the Final Fantasy series, and the creator of Dragon Ball. This one was most interesting because it was an Xbox exclusive. It was only on the Xbox 360 and continues to be. I mean, it's playable on the Xbox Series, Xbox One, etc., which is where I played. I played it on the Xbox Series X. It wasn't on other platforms until the sequels that were on DS for some reason. For most JRPGs, an hour isn't usually enough time to really get a feel of something. Blue Dragon sort of gets you into past the sort of plot setup stuff and into like a little bit of the game pretty quickly. There's a sense playing it that you can tell that this was intended to sort of be a Westerner's first JRPG. So I think they understood what they were doing by being an Xbox exclusive. The Xbox didn't do well in Japan. It was primarily something that was popular in the United States. And JRPGs traditionally aren't the most popular games in the West. So there's things about it that feel like not necessarily simplified, but over-explained to someone who's maybe played a few JRPGs before. But from what I played, it wasn't like egregious. There was some stuff that was really weird to have, like
playable.
And it's like those little things are like, if I've played a game like this before, I know, you know, I understand how this works. But if you haven't, it might be, I don't know, it might be something that it's useful to have. I don't know. But I turned off the voiced part. I don't know if I can turn off the text, but that's not as big of an issue. There's nothing here too unusual for a JRPG outside of there being no random encounters. Enemies show up in the world, and then either you run into them or they run into you, and then a battle starts, and that's how that goes. Otherwise, I can't really think of anything that would be particularly standout. If you dabbled in turn-based RPGs, you've probably seen all this before. It's just like a bunch of stuff I've seen before all put into one place, and that doesn't mean it's bad, it's just sort of like standard, you know? What I feel like is probably the biggest draw for most people in the JRPG is the story, these big grand narratives of going to kill God or whatever that JRPGs tend to be about. I don't think I've ever finished one. No, wait, I finished Final Fantasy 15. I think that's it. Anyway, the story in Blue Dragon that I've experienced so far is there's this land shark that comes around and does stuff, and it's attacking the main character's village. And so the main character and his two child friends, or one of his child friends, make a plan to go fight it somehow. They're like, we're gonna take down this thing because no one else will. And they end up roping in another friend of theirs during their attack just due to their proximity. Their plan kind of works, but in the process they get pulled down into a hole. Once you get down in that hole, you start getting the basic beginnings of like, here's an area, wander around, get sort of a feel of the game. You can try out some battles and stuff. And then once you do all that, you end up getting onto a land shark, but they're not really land sharks. They're these metal flying shark machines. They fly, but they can also burrow underground. So you get on top of one, and it takes off and goes to this thing in space. And an enemy stand user kicks your butt, and you get thrown out of it, but for some reason you fall back up to it, and you eat a pill that gives you and your friends stand powers, and then that's pretty much as far as I've gotten in terms of story. I'm sure it goes somewhere, I'm sure it's interesting enough, but what the game loses by being pretty quick to get you into gameplay is that it doesn't really give you a lot of narrative to hold on to. The game's visuals are pretty dated. They're not terrible though. The stylization really kind of helps it hold up a bit better, but it's not quite as good. Like, games have gotten so much better since this game came out that even though the stylization really helps it not look ancient, it still like looks dated, you know? Hi-Fi Rush is a thing. I don't know if you've looked at that. It's really good looking. You know, the SpongeBob game, the Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrating, because I've not played Cosmic Shake, I don't have footage of that, but Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated generally looks really good. This could look like that if, like, someone remade it for modern platforms or something. I think, like, this would be a great thing to remake for modern platforms, at least visually. My only real negative so far is that your movement speed is kind of slow through the areas you can walk around. There are plenty of other things I probably could mark as like potential negatives or whatever, but it's really just like, do you like turn-based JRPGs? If you don't, you're probably not gonna, there's not really much for you here. If you're open to the idea, if you've never played a JRPG before and you're open to the idea of one, this might be a decent one to start with. It seems like it's, at least in terms of its mechanics, being very open and explanative as to what everything is and how to do everything for people who haven't, you know, spent extended chunks of their lives either playing through or at least just trying JRPGs. I've mostly just tried them. I've not really played through very many of them, but I've picked up and tried a handful enough over the years to understand them. I've played bits of some of the classics, so like I get what they're like and stuff, but I've not really dove in and really played through very many. If you've never played one, this one might be a good place to start. Even if you have played a bunch, this is standard, but it's not bad. The only things that are potentially turn-offs are the dated visuals and the slow movement speed, and potentially that the game might be a bit too hand-holdy for some people. I don't think that's the case. I think it's just tutorializing in terms of like, here's a block of text telling you how things to do and all that. But yeah, I think this one is another pass question mark. With JRPGs, it's always hard to be like, yeah, I'm gonna play it and finish it, because they're very long most of the time, and I don't necessarily have the time to sit in front of the TV, at least, and play 100+ hours of a game the way that I might on the Switch or something, or I might have when I was younger. So that's where my verdict is on Blue Dragon. It's interesting, but I don't know. That's really all I had to say. I guess we'll get to the end bits here. If you go in the description, you find a beacons.ai link. I'll take you to anywhere you need to go in terms of my stuff, you know, Patreon, Bandcamp, blah, 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 etc. Click that link, go to those places, do what you do there. Like the video if you liked it, dislike if you didn't. Subscribe if you want to keep up with this and other shows. I do all sorts of things. Leave a comment. Have you played Blue Dragon? Have you played either of the DS games? There's 2 of them. They are very expensive. Well, the second one is very expensive. The first one is kind of standard second-hand DS game prices. Leave a comment on what you think. Share the video. Do the things. Do the things. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!